One of the books that we had to read in high school was A Tale of Two Cities. And it begins with, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And that's quite significant because that reflects upon my experience in Evanston.
Evanston at one time was the most segregated place there was.
African Americans felt as second-class citizens.
The beaches were segregated. The retail stores were segregated. Schools were segregated.
Some of the finest basketball players in Chicago area, but they didn't play on the Evanston Township High School basketball team.
White children had their prom at the country club, and the black kids had theirs where they could.
The Evanston was so rigid as far as segregation that I didn't realize that there were no Jews living in Evanston. I think there may have been 2 or 3 families.
Northwestern University was segregated, housing was segregated.
And the Grove Street YMCA was segregated.
I love Evanston, but that's the fact of life.
If you lived in the 5th Ward, which you did, and back then most of us lived in the same zip code, unlike now. And so therefore, everybody knew everybody.
See, Evanston wasn't that big. You went from Darrell to Brown, from Church Street to Simpson. Well, some people lived on Garnett. I don't know them because there was always the fight between the Garnett gang and the Brown Street gang.
Went to church on Sundays. On Saturday night during the summer, we'd have neighborhood night.
We knew every home that the teenagers lived in from the time we crossed the railroad tracks at Ridge Avenue till we got to the canal.
Hopscotch going on in one alley.
Kids would ride their bicycles and play marbles.
Double Dutch on the other alley. At that time, Evanston had a lot of singing groups.
Groups that did doo-wops, street corner singing like, I'm an ever-spinning top, whirling around till I drop.
We had more of a village back then.
Walk down the streets, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, you know, good evening.
People would come home and they would see us out playing and they said, have you kids had your dinner yet? No, my parents are still at work. Well, you come over to the house and eat.
Good cooks back in those days, and they really looked out for the people in the neighborhoods.
I don't remember my mom locking the doors.
I guess nobody knew where the key was to the house.
A lot of times we would come back and one of our friends would be sitting in our living room waiting on us to come home.
It smelled like apple blossom time when we got here. It was just all over the place, just like love, that's what it was, love.
Everybody helped to raise you, and it was fun. And you know you were on your best behavior because you better be. That was one of the things that, you know, was expected of you.
Well, when we came along, my mother and them had a grapevine that no matter what you did, if it was wrong.
I saw Carl on Dewey and Emerson, and he was throwing tomatoes at this car that was going by, and so
they heard about it.
If you got into trouble on the streets,
before I got home,
some adult would see me on the street and they would say, come here.
And then they got on our case about what had happened.
And she knew before I got home.
A member of the village had told my parents.
I understand, my mother used to start out with that, I understand you stopped at such and such a place. No, I didn't. So I guess they're telling a lie on you. I said, I ain't called nobody a lie.
And now if you got a good grade in school, when you was in school, everybody in the neighborhood knew it, and somebody would cook you a cake or a rolls.
The police officers knew your parents. The school teachers knew your parents. And the firemen knew your parents.
And you prayed to God the teacher never stopped at your house.
All the officers of those days, you know, they all lived here.
The Sunday school teacher, the pastor of the church, we were all kind of one.
It's like a family, you know. It's really like a family.
I have a lot of fond memories of Emerson Street YMCA, a lot of fond memories.
It was like you're home away from home.
That's the only place we could go. That was a focal point of our social activity.
We went there for summer programs. We went there for after-school programs.
When it got time for school to be out, I started twitching.
We used to say we'd take a shortcut to the wire.
Wire would open up about 4:30, and everybody was lined up outside.
That's where I was introduced to boxing.
Yeah, we had a little boxing club.
Pool, judo, ping pong.
Oh, I got good at that.
Met a lot of good friends. We're still friends today, as a matter of fact.
Fondest memory I have was the time I spent there with my father. Shooting pool with my dad, and actually shooting one of the cue balls, the correct ball, into a hole.
The father and son banquet. That was so special that I could go to a dinner with my dad, to a banquet. And I looked forward to that every year because back then there was, all of us, 9 of us, I never had a chance to go out to dinner with my dad. My dad couldn't afford it. He was a domestic worker. But every year to go to that dinner and sit there with my dad and my brothers, my other 2 brothers at the time, and be with my dad and with all the men, it was fantastic.
My Saturday mornings were wonderful because I knew I was going to the Y, and I knew I was going with my dad.
I was taught how to swim by Mr. Boyd and learned how to swim, and we'd go every Tuesday and Thursday.
They had a whole ritual of what you had to do before you could get in the pool.
There were all these doors. You had to take a shower first.
And they would check your wrists, and they would rub it like this.
And if we had dirt, they would send us back to the showers.
And then next time they rub your ankles down there, and so it took a while before you got in the pool.
But it was amazing because we swam naked. Nobody's ever explained to us why we had to swim naked. The girls wore swimming suits.
They always had the pool first, and then we had to wait till they get out of the pool and get dressed, and then we could go in and go in the pool. So it was kind of tricky at times.
Ted was like a fish in the water. I mean, he could break a wave and you wouldn't even know it. He was smooth. I mean, he's just sort of smooth, silent, quiet, just water. And he'd always used to say, I can teach anybody to swim in 10 minutes.
And he started all of us on the side of the pool doing the flutter kick.
He was a good instructor, and I think he realized that I was frightened of the water.
Mr. Boyd was a very interesting guy because he knew when you was ready for that deep pool.
He said, well, Jim, how do you feel about, swimming in the deep water now? And I go, I don't think I'm ready for that now.
If you wouldn't get into it on your own, when you walked around that pool, what he would do is hit you in your arm and you would flop into the pool.
He said, okay, now swim across. And I'm floundering in the water. And
I could hear the other kids on the side telling me to go, 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 and everybody was screaming and hollering.
I said, God, I can swim in deep water now.
Oh, that was wonderful.
He knew when you were ready, even before you did.
Then I got enough nerve to get on the diving board.
I did my belly flops. I did my somersaults.
And I remember he kept telling me, jump. He said to myself, you want me to jump, you better push me.
Every guy thought he was a man when he could do the jackknife.
No, I didn't scream. I felt like hitting him, though.
That gave me a feeling of power because there wasn't that many girls that would go off that diving board.
We could go down to the lakefront and jump off the pier into Lake Michigan because we knew how to swim. We knew how to swim.
And that was a good day. That was a real good day.
My dad was very talented in the water, and he passed that on to me.
He was a main influence on my life and the life of many of my friends. I know that.
I cared about what he thought, and he cared about us.
It's funny how one person can leave an impression on you that lasts your whole life.
Gave it to so many kids.